Just keep paddling all the way to the end.
Welcome back to 340 Paddler.
I told you. Like
We are
Chip and
talking
Dale's in
about
here.
ground crew. Unfortunately, my wife has taken my tux. She left. Moving on. Joining us today are Ellen Robinette.
But you ladies can't see her. Those are Millie's. Those are Millie's.
You just tell me I can turn my video off. Make it stop.
So anyway, joining us today are, in order on my screen, Megan Kruzlicki, my ground crew for years. She puts up with me, takes my tux, and has ground crewed for 7 340s, including 6 with small children of varying ages, some of them even hers. Next, we have Ellen Robinette, who has ground crewed for her husband, Doug, don't call me a ginger Robinette. He flies down the course. He's the only man to ever draft off of Joe Matt. And I believe, Ellen, you've ground crewed, what, 5 times, 6 times?
Yeah, we're 5.
All right.
5 or 6, it depends.
With a gaggle of children.
And with quite a few children, some of which have good arms and are willing to watch young ones at the Ameristar. And then we have returning Laura Milby, who has ground crewed, I believe, 4 times, 4 or 5 times, 3 times, for her husband, Ryan. Done a fantastic job, done it carrying small children. Some of those were even hers. Some of them were mine. It's fine. I mean, we don't really argue that much about who's watching the children. So this is our panel, and today it is ground crew. So I'm going to back away, but before I do, I just want to remind everyone, this is a webinar. So if you are on the Zoom webinar, if you type a question into Q&A, our panelists will see it, I will see it, and we can answer it. We can't actually see you, so just be aware of that. Otherwise, I'm going to hand it over to Megan and let you get started so that people can actually pay attention and stop laughing at my embarrassment of a body. Thank you.
Yeah, I just wanted to wear the tux because I thought it would look cool. And then he's like, great, you get to host. So bear with me. We're gonna roll here. Point 1, preparation and packing. Ladies, have any advice or tips? What do you like to do?
That should definitely not be me. Ellen's much more prepared. Let's go with her.
So everybody's going to be different on it, but over the years, I think what I have found that helps us the most is we kind of start talking about the 340 right when he signs up for it, like January. And throughout the months, we'll lay out different bags for different checkpoints, and we'll put everything that he's going to need for that checkpoint in that bag. And then we check and double check and triple check and have backups to the backups. I mean, and then the outside things that you don't think of, like, oh, maybe he really would like a Slurpee just because it's really hot out, but then you got to worry about sugar. So there's, I guess, just a lot of conversation between you and the paddler.
Did you do that the first year too? Oh, okay.
God bless you. Like, So I really didn't know what I was in for. And that first year I had a lot of health issues. So Chris pretty much was like, I just need you to take care of me. I'll pack everything. I'll do everything, which was great until I needed to find things. And he wasn't there because he was on the water. So what I learned very quickly that first year is I need to do the packing so that I know where to find things when I need them. I then continued to let him pack for a few years. Lesson was not learned early on, but definitely ground crew, pack your own bags, know where your stuff is. I actually have a backpack where I kind of label things. So if somebody else, like if Chris walks up while I'm emptying his boat, he knows where I've put my blister band-aids and the tape and everything else. So if you see like a backpack written all over with Sharpie and all, It's probably ours. Yeah, know where your stuff is in the car is the biggest thing, I think, right? In packing. And you can't do that if you're not doing it on your own. You let somebody else do it. It's just impossible to find. In terms of lists and stuff, yeah, if you're organized like Ellen and Doug, awesome. If you're like Chris and I, plans will change 80 times over. So I know what I need. He knows what he needs. We listen to each other chat back and forth throughout the year. And then when it comes down to it, as we're rolling into St. Louis, where do we start? No, we don't start in St. Louis, Kansas City. Yeah. My brain is working today. As we're rolling into Kansas City and he's packing the night before to get his sleep, I'm like, all right, what is your bottom line? What do you want? Where? Because I can make your bottom line happen. I just need to know where you're at today when we're starting, because we've changed 50 times already, which is fine. Just check in with your racer and your own temperament and like personalities. Know where you're at. Driving directions.
I'll take that one.
Yeah.
Don't do what we did the first year. So we didn't prep at all. I had a baby 9 weeks before the first 340 that we did. And we didn't pack the car. So you're right. Definitely a big faux pas the first year. So even if paddling's not your thing and you're a ground crew, you should still pack the car. And then if you're not going to pack, like she said, the backpacks, make sure there's a list on the front, because like heated tubs, and we just need a list of what's in the tub because you're not going to have time to dig. But we learned the first year that we had the granny's guides, which is awesome because, we didn't know what we were doing, but we also realized really quick that we didn't know which way the river went out of Kansas City. So we live just like 10 minutes north of Labonite checkpoint or Labonite river access and, in Liberty. And, we drove there and waved and yelled, and then oh my gosh, make it stop. And then we, what is happening?
He's showing off our grannies.
Okay.
Printed off all the maps and everything.
Please turn your video back off. So we didn't know which way to go after that. I still remember being like literally in the middle of the road going, I don't know how to put coordinates into a GPS. I had my mom and mother-in-law with me. We had no idea what we were doing. So if we can make it, you can too. We stopped. I think we mostly stopped at just checkpoints, but like the driving directions are great if you're going checkpoint to checkpoint. We started to have trouble when we needed to go literally anywhere else in between the checkpoints. So I think now over the years, we've learned to save an offline copy of the Google map on my phone, so that when you don't have service, you can still navigate. And then I have Ellen's awesome map that she's made now on. I'm sure she can tell you all about it. So that's what we do now. So now we have all the checkpoints or where we're going to stop the river accesses starred on the Google map, and you can access those even when you're offline. But first year, don't feel bad. If you don't know which way the river goes, it's cool. You'll figure it out.
Yep, you'll learn the river right and the river left, and you're like, oh, I need to be on the other side of the river to get to that. Let me backtrack 30 minutes.
I was going to say it may take you a couple of hours to get to the other side of the river, which I have never knew that either. So awesome.
I did that the first year, and every year that we've done it, it's been me and the boys. So we have two boys that started with us back in 2014 was our first year. So they were 8. I don't know. They were small. But I was just going to show you guys, I'm super organized and nerdy, but so I have a kayak binder, literally race binder, right? So silly. But in this, I have all of the maps printed and all the checkpoints starred and whether they're river right or river left. And then at the bottom, from Cox to Napoleon, it takes me about 45 minutes to an hour to get there. So I'm giving myself my time frame. So I have it all printed. I have gas stations marked. You'll learn that as you go. But I did an online version, and I'll share that when we're done with this on the 340 Facebook page. But I also have the backup of Granny's driving guide, because that's where I built my map from, was all of her great directions and her little tidbits. So
yeah.
But if you get lost, you just look for a car that has a sticker on it and you'll be fine. No big deal.
Yeah. I eventually learned two things about our GPS. Is one, I need to have a little plug adapter so that I can charge my GPS and my phone at the same time. Because when I had to unplug our GPS to charge my phone overnight, and I can't read a printed map in the dark, I had no idea where I was going. So get yourself an adapter that you can charge at least two items at the same time if you're using a GPS. And also, it took me a couple of years to figure it out, but I figured out that I could just pin each ramp on my GPS, and I just labeled it like which checkpoint it was. And so anytime we're down there, even just to visit over whenever, we'll click the go to and it pulls up all the 340 checkpoint lists, like, where do you want to go? And I'm like, somewhere not on the race right now. But that's always an option too. I always carry Granny's guide with me, even though I don't use it as much anymore. I like to have it on hand. I luckily in the last couple of years, Chris adopted Scott Reeves, bless you, sir, as our second ground crew who now does the driving, and he knows exactly where he's going. So it's awesome when you have that option too.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Ellen.
I was just going to say, I know there was a couple of years where they were doing a lot of construction on some of the routes that I would normally take to get to the ramps or the next point. So like a few days before the race, I always kind of go online and just see like the construction areas to see if there's anything that lights up. Then I know I need
you planning ahead.
That's smart.
But
I was going to say, the first year too, we focused mainly on the checkpoints because that's what everybody talked about. There's a few weird things with the checkpoints, like Wilson. You'll hear people call it Norrin Access or Wilson Serenity Port or Jeff City. But what is that? Which one is the one you put in the Google? So make sure you know what you're looking for and what it's actually called versus what people call it on Facebook. So Ellen's map is great for that because you can see what the actual name is. The other thing was I focused really just on the checkpoints, and then we needed to get to Chamoy. Am I saying that right? I always say it wrong. Okay.
Chamoy,
we called it Chammy the first year. And it was 2 a.m. And again, everything we talk about, it just depends how fast your racer's going. So we had a lot of time Ryan's first year because he wasn't going as fast as maybe he did his second or third year. So we had some time to figure out where we were going, but we ended up following some strangers whose kid was apparently near Ryan, and they were going there too. And literally we kept joking that we were going to be taken out in the middle of Missouri to be killed and chopped into pieces because the places they were taking us were, middle of nowhere roads, and it's 2 a.m. And normally you wouldn't follow strangers' places, but yeah. So focus on other ramps that you might have to end up at, I guess, is where I was going with that thought.
Little known tips about Chamoy. They have camping available if you bring a tent or hookups for RVs and trailers. They also have in their bathroom house showers. So if you're looking for an extra shower along the way, there's Chamoy. Also, there's a playground for kids. So it's a great place to stop, find some shade. Chris is pointing out that there are ground crew flags available this year, which is awesome because, more easily identifiable to be following each other and things like that. Also, if you don't see a sticker or a flag, usually a fair amount of us have little chalk paint on our windows and that sort of stuff. We're going to shift gears a little bit into parking. Do you have a preferred? Where do you look for parking? What do you, I know Lexington tends to be busier. So the sooner I can get there, the better, the closer I can get, especially if you have small children. right? Like Lexington can be
I think
fair walk.
Lexington gets busy because you've got everybody's still in the race, right?
Yeah.
So you've got the whole pack coming to Lexington or coming to that first checkpoint. So it gets busy. But the only place I've ever had any trouble parking was Doug's first year at Miami.
Oh yeah, Miami's a tough one for parking if you're in the main pack.
Yeah, and we didn't know. I had no idea, and so we planned to sleep. So I've got a tent and everything. We drove around for like 30 minutes before I finally got a place to park and put the tent up.
Yeah.
Needless to say, we really didn't sleep, and that was not.
Yeah. Miami tends to be like people are awake and making noise. So if you're hoping to sleep, you either got to be really tired or just move on to the next spot.
But I think that's a good point, Ellen, because it really depends. Everybody asks about parking on the groups, and it really matters where your racer is. I mean, you're right. By Lexington, you still have most of the people. By Waverly, you still most of the people. Waverly's always tricky because there's always somebody with a giant RV that's trying to get down to the like lowest level. So Waverly's like ba-bump, ba-bump, ba-bump over a train track. So there's nowhere really easily to turn around at the end. So if you're taking something bigger, like we took a trailer the third year because otherwise we were going to get divorced because I was pregnant, like, I don't know, a million months and had a 2-year-old. And so we had our tiny little bed on wheels trailer, but see, I knew that we wouldn't fit down low. So we parked at the very top and I made sure I could pull out. And we were also there, I think, before the rush. So it wasn't as bad, but you got to kind of scope out if you're planning to take something larger, but I think what we say tonight is probably with the assumption that you want to be kind to other people. So let's just put that out there and respectful. So have a conversation, whoever's driving the thing, make sure you know where to, park and make sure you've scoped the ramps to know which ones are going to be problematic. So there are small ones like Miami, Waverly's tricky with bigger vehicles. Herman can be if you get in that parking lot and it's super busy. So just be, you might want to check them out. You can Google Earth them, even if you don't want to drive to all of them. Just Google Earth and see where the ramp is and think about how many cars are going to be there.
I feel like Waverly's not as busy as it used to be. We've had more people going to Waverly 2, as it's known, which is just like a block down from the actual checkpoint. It smells like dead, rotting fish over at Waverly 2. There are a lot of fishers there that they
don't have,
leave the carcass. Corn. And there's a fish gutting station. They what?
They don't have sweet corn down there. The Boy Scouts are at the other one, and the best.
So actually, the Boy Scouts last year came to Waverly too.
Did they?
Was it last year? Year before? I don't know, but they started moving over to Waverly too as well.
That helps.
It does. There's a hose, but it's at a fish gutting station, so to each your own. I know Waverly 1 has like an actual water spigot. But there is also a swing set at Waverly 2. It's a small one. It's got 3 little swings and it's kind of close to the train tracks as well. So watch any little ones go into play, but it tends to be, even with a higher population, it's still less busy.
Yeah. I was going to say, and you have to be careful too on some of the stops or the checkpoints, like, some have bathrooms, some don't have bathrooms. So if you are bringing children that might need to do number 2 at a non-bathroom checkpoint, bring supplies to take care of that, because it may or may not have happened to me a couple of times.
Yeah.
You got the little poop bags that happen to be in the car from the dog, and you're like, yep.
We definitely
take care of that. We're going to down that.
We've definitely potty trained along the river. It's cool. It happens to the best of us.
Shovels, toilet paper, they all little trowels. They live in the car. They come to the 340.
Yeah, Megan, the water spigot at Waverly is a good point, because that's a great place to clean out if you have like perpetuum bottles type things that are harder to get cleaned out in your car with a bottle of water. That's a good one with lots of pressure that you can clean them out there.
There's not as many with access to the spigots anymore. I think it's just Waverly. You have a couple where you might have, like, if the bathroom's open, you have the sink, but that is kind of if you can get the container in there, so
That people come up with things like buckets with the hoses that have pressure so they can spray. I mean, I've seen some really cool.
Yeah.
I'm not that cool, but some of people are cool and have those things.
Speaking of, if you are looking at Granny's book, a lot of the ones checkpoints, Granny's book notates which checkpoints do and don't have accessible water. But I feel like that's changed over the years. Lexington used to have water, but now it's only potable or purchasing. So really kind of ask around. I usually try and have a gallon or two of water extra in the car, just in case I run to one that doesn't have water. You know,
I keep a tote, like an empty Rubbermaid tote in the van. And so when we pull Doug's stuff out, the dirty stuff, it all goes in that tote. And then I go to a gas station and I take it to the bathroom or the outside hose that they all have, and I wash it all up there. And then we're good to go for the next one, swap out. So there are tons of Casey's gas stations all along the way, and 66 and Walmart. There's a couple of Walmarts. So you've got lots of places you can walk.
If you need to bathe a child, we've done that in Casey's bathroom sink. So just plop them down in there and swish them around and they'll be fine.
But always carry the extra water, the extra bags of ice.
Side note, if you do have small children, throw a blanket over their lap, because if they get car sick, the last thing you want to do is clean vomit from all over your car. I've had to do it 3 times. And the best time was when she happened to have a blanket over her lap and I could just fold it up and I literally put it in a bag and threw it away. Because I'd done it twice before where I had to go find a hose and hose her down, and it's a mess. So, you know, because you never know if your kid's going to get car sick, right? She's not normally a car sick kind of kid, but if she's eating and drinking in the car and the heat and all the stress, and, you know. Speaking of eating, what do you ladies do for eating? How do you feed yourself and take care of yourself on the road?
Ellen?
Don't hate me. So in the car. So we organize this and we set it up this way on purpose. So we've got Doug's side of the car. We have a van. Doug's got his side, and then the ground crew has their side. So I have a cooler for me and the boys, and we have our sandwiches and our drinks and all of our goodies and all the things that we would need along the way. And I have found that there are a couple of fresh fruit and vegetable stands that have amazing apples and peaches.
Oh, I got those pinned on my GPS too.
Yep. So those are fun. So really that, and I just keep, the cooling towels or cold wash rags in the coolers for us. And we're pretty, we think about it too much. And
we do.
Now, Lori, you've got some special eating restrictions on your crew. So how do you address some of that?
Yeah. So my son has a lot of eating disorder type issues. So we take everything, but we do that anyway. So that's nothing crazy for the race, but we always have whatever we need, because, the smaller towns, if you have special diets, you should definitely, especially for yourself or your racer, make sure that you take what you need, because really until you hit Jeff City, would you say, Ellen, maybe the big places are not as close, because you're driving into Richmond or somewhere else, right? And that's another, 30, 40 minutes, right? And then up and back. And it seems like it wouldn't take that long, but like, again, depending on how fast your paddler's going, you may only have 3 to 4 hours, which sounds like a lot, but by the time you pack stuff up and get ready for the next stop and then drive to your next place and you eat and you clean up and you find a bathroom and it's, oh my gosh, they're coming in. So it sometimes you don't have enough time. I mean, it's a little easier now because we don't have as many checkpoints. So that's good. But if they need to stop, then it doesn't matter if it's a checkpoint, right? I mean, you're still stopping. So we take all of our own special food in a cooler. The first couple of years, and I'm still really bad about taking food that I'm actually going to eat. Like there's always like what you think you're going to eat, and then there's what you're going to eat. Like I used to think making a peanut butter and jelly sandwich for ground crew wouldn't be a big deal, but it's so annoying to find a clean surface and get bread out and stuff. So then we just started buying Uncrustables and throwing them in the cooler for the racer and throw them in for us because they're quick, they're prepackaged, they stay cold. great. You don't have to clean anything. I know that sounds really lazy, but for some reason it's like laborious to have to do that. And then we really just eat, honestly, our family just eats off of the stands at the different stops. So we would always know that like Waverly had sweet corn and burgers or whatever. We'd eat there with peaches. And then we knew, each one, we knew like Glasgow has the delicious food truck. We have different ones each time. I mean, that one's pretty standard and Waverly, but sometimes they change. Like they used to have Chick-fil-A at Jeff City. So we do Chick-fil-A sandwiches. So if you kind of like, I think they'll put some information out ahead of the race so that you'll know where the food is. And then that was just easiest for us. That way you're not just eating a ton of fast food. You feel like you're eating some real food. And I don't know. Mm-hmm. That's what we do. We're not organized like Ellen is. So it's a little fly by the seat of your pants. We definitely always have probably a Walmart run at Jeff City to grab things that are terrible for you and just sound good, and more water and more ice and stuff. So.
Or shoes. If you lose, accidentally, kid leaves their shoes in the mud.
One year we bought blankets, and actually I bought tennis shoes. I think our first year we bought these giant cheap blankets and tennis shoes because we thought it was going to be hot, and it was like 50 degrees at night, and our plan was to sleep in the car, but we had so many people with us and it was cold outside, so we ended up all sleeping in the van. It was terrible. So
I was going to say too, with the food for your paddler, like I know that sometimes like a hot chicken sandwich from McDonald's, like a McChicken, is something that somebody might want. Well, but it may be, an hour before he's going to get to the checkpoint. Well, if you leave your car running a little while and you can put it like under your hood, it'll keep it hot. It's fine.
That's a good idea. No. I'm not that nice. I think we've established that. So I'll just like eat the cold sandwich. I don't know.
You get what you get when it gets to you at that point. Like you can stomach that, right?
But that's a good point, Megan. Or Ellen, the sandwich or driving to somewhere, it could also be far away. So careful when they request things. You might want to pre-build in where you're going to stop for that special thing because you may have to get it on your way to the next place. It may not be close.
Yeah, you might not find it closer in. That said, a lot of people sometimes have those special wants, and knowing where like the Subway is or where the whatever, that's a good thing to Google. Chris is very particular about what he eats. If he didn't train with it, he's not taking it. So I couldn't get a burger at one stop and was like, oh man, what do I do? Because it was one of the ones where the kid threw up and I was busy hosing it out. So by the time he got there, I was like, I don't have time to go get a burger. Everybody's like, oh, we've got sandwiches, we've got these drinks, he won't do it. He just does not want to risk upsetting his stomach. And so know that about your racer too. Like, are they going to have cravings and want extra food, or are they really needing to stick to their diet so they don't throw off, a sensitive system? Because a foreign food while you're racing could be the difference between DNFing or not.
That's true.
Yep. Doug,
something as simple as
Doug did this thing in 2015, I think it was. He was all about like all these electrolytes, and he had trained with them all season and thought, man, these are the best. He went so heavy on it that he DNF'd at Lexington.
Yeah. So way too paying attention to your racer too, like whether they are drinking or not, whether they're eating or not, know what's coming out of their boat as well as going in. And just giving them a once over, right? I mean, there's plenty of times where they're coming out and you're going, you're not looking quite right. Chris's first year, it was a really, really hot year and he wasn't used to that heat. So by the time we got to Glasgow, he wanted to keep pushing because it was midday. And I'm like, you're not going to make it. Like, you just need to go lay down in the shade in a breezy area and take your nap, and you can paddle at night to make it up. But you cannot paddle in this heat. So knowing also like what their temperament is, where they're training, can they do the heat? Do they need to adjust their plan? Is really key, I think, for ground crew as well. Like, it's your job to keep track of their physical well-being as well as their mental well-being. sometimes they just hit that, I just can't anymore and I'm gonna quit. And you're like, oh, well, you could get in your boat and float the whole rest of this way and still make 88 hours. How about we just give it a few minutes before we make that call about quitting? Knowing how to talk them down and really just get them to take a minute and think things through.
Yeah. And if you don't know your racer very well, I'm sure that we're all spouses, so it's a little easier. We know when they're delusional.
Yeah.
They're
valid.
all going to look terrible. Nobody's going to look like they're ready to go run a marathon. So if you see them stumbling out of a boat, that's normal. Your legs cease to work after a certain point. For a lot of people, I know I was a disaster the entire time. So if somebody had seen, the way I was acting, they would have been, she needs to stop. But I think if you don't know your racer, you guys need to have a conversation on what are the points at which you need to have that conversation, and, make sure that you don't preemptively pull them, right? If they're really they're just worn out, so make sure you guys have that conversation, because the time to have that is not on the bank, when they either want to quit and you think they're okay to keep going, or opposite, where you think that they look like a disaster and they need to come off, the river. So I like that, Megan, like having just a moment to think about it before you're going to quit, because a lot of times, right, like if they would just go take an hour nap, their frame of mind might shift substantially, or go eat a big sandwich, or, take a minute to cool off. So,
we have, so, and you've seen us do the pit stops, Laura. And
it's aggressive. It's quick and aggressive.
And so we've got a backpack and we do all this swap. But so when Doug gets out of that boat, I'm checking his eyes. I'm checking his fingers to see how hydrated he is. So if you pinch that and see how fast it goes back down, should be within 1 to 3 seconds if you're hydrated, just so you know. I've checked his pee bottle to see if his pee looks okay. I'm just saying. But those are important things to do. You want to make sure they're not cramping, that they're not having spasms, because that's one of the first signs of the dehydration. And with running it in July, you got to hydrate. You've got to get heat acclimated way before the race comes. You can't just jump in to do it.
I think it's important to throw out there too. It's important for the ground crew to do that too.
Yeah.
Stay hydrated. Try and get acclimated to the heat. Yes, you have air conditioning in your car, but you're not always going to have access to it. You may not even have access to shade all the time. Lexington is the first stop you're at. There is no shade. It is miserably hot, and you're there for a pretty long time if you want decent parking anyway. So a lot of people will bring like sheets or something to throw over the windows of their car to keep it cooler. Umbrellas or some kind of thing to put up for themselves to give you some shade.
Just the shade's good, Megan, but make sure you pack it so you can get your crap out, because that's the other thing with packing the car yourself is we packed that first year and our chairs were a big old pain. We brought some awning that was a big old pain.
And that's the thing is, are you going to use it? Is it going to be feasible? For me, like that first year with my health issues, couldn't carry these big giant duffel bags that Chris packed full. So I went looking for like a little pull wagon or pull cart, and you all see that classic picture of the car with the grocery cart strapped to the top. That is mine. Okay. Technically Chris's car, but I was driving because I stopped at this one store and I was like, I just need something where I can wheel this stuff because I can't carry it. I'm going to black out. There's all these issues. And the lady was like, I don't have anything like that, but you're going to take a shopping cart. I was like, I'm never getting that off the roof of my car. I'm not even 5 foot tall. And she's like, just ask somebody. Here's the other thing you need to know as ground crew, especially if it's your first year. When people say, just ask. My first year was too nervous and shy and didn't want to be, a hassle. And you know what ended up happening? I didn't take care of myself. I couldn't sleep because I was nervous about missing him. I didn't eat. Ended up not being able to regulate my body temperature. In the second half of the race, I had to go to the hotel and sleep, and Chris was on his own, and other ground crews took care of him because I didn't take care of myself.
But look how far you came, Megan. You were leaving your baby with strangers like 2 years later. So exactly. Yeah, pretty much.
there with a 9-month-old, like, oh, look at that. My kid woke up. Oh, you all were watching her? Fantastic. Hey, I got to go run down here. Can you? Yeah, you got her? Awesome.
No, so
I
good.
think I got lucky. I was just gonna say the first year Doug did the race.
Mhm.
It's like no secret. I'm a huge Joe Wilson fan. Like I think he was the most amazing person ever. So the first year Doug does this race, we'd planned to sleep at Jeff City or Noreen Access or Wilson Serenity Points, all three, right?
All three.
Mm-hmm.
We're going to sleep there. And I get there and I set the tent up and there's other people setting the tent up and this and that. And that Chick-fil-A tent was there. And I was like, oh, thank you so much. And they had like 3 sandwiches left. So we got like the last ones of the night and I just stuck them in the tent and I go down on the little beach area there and Joe was sitting there and we just sat and talked and he's explaining to me how wonderful this paddling community is, and doing it all these years and getting to know everybody and you guys, it's like, it's just a family. We all take care of each other. If you need something, you ask.
And it can be really intimidating as a first year coming in and seeing that and knowing that you don't know anyone. But honestly, if they have something and they can spare it without, putting their racer at a detriment or themselves at a detriment, they will. Because we've all been in that place where, oh, shoot, I didn't grab this or I can't find it and somebody else has got it. And, we can stop at the store if we need to, or it's fine. I've got enough extra, here it is.
Well, and more than that too, Megan, I mean, there was a year, I think it was the last year I ground crewed before I raced, and there was a really panicked dad. I think it was a dad that stopped us because a storm had gone through and their kid was stuck on a riverbank. Like, what should I tell her to do? Is there any way to pull out? Like, what should I tell her? I'm really freaking out and trying to help just talk through it. Like, is there anything we can do to assist? Do we need to get them in charge, in contact with somebody, having those numbers, like, that they give that we, if you need to contact someone or you're concerned about a racer for the safety boats, having those things. Yep. Ellen's got it.
Oh yeah.
The safety card. So
I usually grab a couple extra. Chris has one. I keep one in the door of my car. We keep one in the binder. I always know where. Yeah. So
racers know that like other ground crews are watching over you too. And if you're going unsupported, same thing. I mean, don't fully rely on everybody else if you're unsupported, but if you need help dropping water at the next point and somebody's you've seen them at the first 2 stops or something, you might ask them, hey, can you drop me this at the and have that conversation. So just know that the ground crews are there. If you need something, if you're on the ramp and you're not sure where your people are, you can ask around too, because generally, not completely, but you might end up traveling with the same pack of people through the race. So they may know who your ground crew is by their weird car or their, giant racks on the top or whatever it is that they see at every point, or the white chalk on the thing. So the more obnoxious your vehicle, the better, I guess. But that helps too.
I always carry a few backups for other paddlers, because I've had several years where people I know and people I don't know have come into a checkpoint and their ground crew's not there. And they're like, no, this is where we're supposed to meet. And I know we're supposed to meet here. And come to find out later, that wasn't where they were supposed to meet. But the paddler was just kind of in that delusional state or miscommunicated somehow. So I always have those backups to hand off to help out with things like that. So it's never a bad idea for any ground crew to carry just a backup, whatever it may be. It doesn't have to be anything massive, but water or some extra like fruit or sandwich, Dr. Pepper or or what.
I'm going to circle back a little bit. I mean, yes, extra food and stuff and the reality of it is that the more we've done it, like the more I realize, we try and eat healthy, and like I just don't on the race. My stomach can't handle it. So like I had to really let go on that one and go, nope, we're just packing snacky junk foods to go on the side. We'll get the burgers and stuff at the ramps and we'll just call it a day. We'll get drinks at the gas stations as we go. It's like our worst diet of the whole year. I stop at those fruit stands and I get the green beans and the peaches and the apples. And that's like what we that and roadside burgers or McDonald's. That's what we sustain ourselves on. But really just kind of let go of that. Like, 'cause sometimes your stomach can only handle so much, you know, and packing all the stuff that you're not going to use just wastes space in the car. Sorry, I rambled. I went back. And I think that's some of it too, is ground crew is really like letting go of your expectations and being really real with yourself, like bringing that shade awning. Am I going to put this up on my own every time? No, then I'm really just not going to bring it. I'm going to wear a hat. I'm going to do this other thing. I used to bring binoculars to try and watch down the river, but realistically for me in those binoculars, all the boats look the same. I can't tell the difference.
Right.
Ellen can. She'll know your racer. She knows what you're wearing. She can see the colors. She's like, oh no, they've got a white paddle blade. That's not your guy. I don't know how she does it. It's amazing.
Yeah.
But I just stopped packing my binoculars because they didn't suit me. They were just one more thing to carry.
I think one of the big things, like, you have to, like, your ground crew, and you have to have that conversation, because there's all of these ground crew people standing on the shore, waving and ringing cowbells and doing the thing.
Mm-hmm.
And you have no idea who you're looking for unless you have on something that you've talked about prior to. Like, we did tie-dye shirts that we do, like the Goonies and funky stuff like that. So it's easy for Doug to spot me and the boys when he comes in. And yeah, I can tell what some of the paddlers are doing, because you pay attention, you know, to that group that they're in or whatever.
Well,
but
and if they're racing, Ellen, they want to know who the other racers are. Did you see so and so go by? Did any other solo boats go? And I'm like, I don't know. But I was with, you know, always be with Ryan's mom, who's good at like watching, like, oh no, this person didn't stop, that's going, and she's checking race out, and I'm like, oh, I don't know, there was some boats and maybe, I don't know.
Yeah. I took Doug's mom with me one year. So we had to have a really nice conversation with each other, because Doug wanted to quit at Catfish Katie's. He was a little upset, but he just didn't feel good. And he was tired, and he had been paddling into the morning sun. So he laid for a bit, and I'm like, okay, how we feeling? Good. Okay. Get back in the boat. You know, he was fine. And she was very mad at me because she thought he should have quit. And like 20, 30 minutes later, I got a text from Doug, and he's like, thanks so much for putting me back in the boat. I feel great. But yeah. And he finished that year in like 45 hours or something. You know, I mean, but you have to be on point with who's with you.
Yes. And their goals. I think that's the other thing is ground crew is that's exactly right, Ellen. Like, are they wanting to hit a certain goal? So first year we were like survive. Second year was like, let's see how this goes. You know, but then the second year we had fast water, and everybody was like, okay, let's go. And, you know, it became abundantly clear that an under 50 was passable. So then I turned into mean ground crew, and I said, get back in the boat, right? Stay in the boat. Don't stop. Yep. You know, you have 10 minutes on the bank because the first year was 13 hours on the bank. You guys, it happens so easily. Yeah. And those are hours, you know, that's the difference between a 60 whatever hour finish and a 50 hour finish. So just keep in mind, you know, less bank time, the better. So your job is to help them with whatever their goal is. So if they're going fast, help them go fast. If they're doing the race for leisure and they just want to chill, help them chill, you know, make it comfortable, throw them a beer, whatever, you know. But if they're racing and they're trying to go super quick, you need to be mindful of what they need to do to get there. So how fast do they need to go? You need to be, you know, if they're not watching. Now, I'm married to a man who watches all the numbers the entire time because he doesn't listen to music and he has no fun. I don't know. He's crazy. But I knew, you know, we were going to keep it to 10 minutes from start to finish, which is really, really hard unless you're tossing a bag. So you're not pulling the boat all the way out necessarily. They may just be pulling up, you're swapping out, they go right back out like a touch and go. So just kind of know what they need to do to accomplish it, keep track of the time. You need to keep track of the time, not only because of what, you know, their goals are, but you have to know their in and out times to send, you know, on race out for checking in and out of the checkpoints. And we document even when we were racing, we had his mom document every stop in and out so that when you're because you're going to analyze the race when you get done, every moment of that race, everybody's going to talk about it. Right. See, Ellen. So every race, you should have a list of like when they came in, when they came out, did they stop at all, know when they came in, how long they spent, so that you can kind of record all of that. So then they can go crazy and figure out every minute that they lost, and they'll do that for the next year until they do it again. So
well, and when you're swapping their stuff out of their boat, just make sure they have sunglasses and make sure block or chapstick or whatever. Those are super important things. Doug breaks more sunglasses on this race than I think is humanly possible.
What is he doing?
I don't know, but we end up with at least like 6 or 7 broken pair of sunglasses every year.
Yep. Making sure they have that stuff and they're reapplying every time they stop. But also if they're leaving and they're not going to be stopping again before dusk, make sure you turn their lights on for them.
Yep.
And if they're coming in the morning, turn those lights off to save the batteries. Like that is something.
Or don't. Make sure you know if they're supposed to be turned off, because I thought they were leave on ones. I don't know.
Yeah. Some people have enough battery life. They can just leave it on the whole way and go. And that's an awesomely safe way to go. So you don't have to worry about whether they're turned on or not. But if you don't have enough battery life, make sure you're bringing extra batteries in case, because you never know. Chris always puts fresh batteries in his boat lights before leaving, but also we'll turn them off during the day. And we're really careful about where he is at dusk.
Headlamp and flashlight before dusk too. So if you're doing night lights, make sure that they have whatever night gear, because that's also really bad if you're heading into a night portion, your lights aren't on, you don't have your flashlight, your headlamp.
Yep. Yeah. Chris likes to throw a glow stick in his boat for lighting that he can see where his stuff is. He'll still carry a flashlight, but he only uses that when he needs to, because otherwise when you're spotting that stuff, you're losing your night vision. He'll also pack some glasses because there were really bad little gnat bugs one year and everybody was eating them. It was crazy.
Megan, with your night vision, with your ground crew, if you have a headlamp on, turn it to red. Because if you look at me with your headlamp on, you're going to drive me crazy. Or don't have your flashlight out. It better be down on the ground as low as it can go, because especially as racers are coming in and jumping back out, they don't have time to get their night vision back, and you could actually cause them to have a lot of trouble.
Yeah. Speaking of courtesy, lights for your racer, you're not night blinding the racers who are paddling by, but also, your fellow ground crew. And also courtesy at night, like the cowbells, lay off of those at night. Some crews are trying alarms. You might be awake, but other crews might be trying to sleep and racers might be trying to sleep. So that's a big thing. If they're sleeping during the day, they kind of take that risk, and it's expected. But at nighttime, try and mind your volume. Speaking of night,
you're a honking horn when you lock your car. Turn that off, or just
or when you open or shut the hatch of your van, it doesn't need to be
slammed. Yeah. And that said, like on the race, especially if you're in the middle of the pack, but even early on, there's usually enough of you that, I would not typically advocate for not locking your car up, but realistically, you can leave your windows down in your car unlocked in this one. Like it's fairly safe. There are people watching out for you.
Nasty racing stuff anyway.
Yeah, my car pretty much reeks anyway. Speaking of nighttime, let's talk about sleeping. Where do you guys sleep? Like Ellen, you guys bring the tent, right?
No,
not anymore.
No. So we've evolved, right? So the first year that Doug did this was, hey, there's this race across Missouri. I'm going to do it. And I'm like, okay, cool. So we did it.
That's how we all get suckered in, right?
Yep. And then he upgraded his boat and then wanted to go faster. Anyway, so the last year he did it was 2018. We took a couple years off because of my health crud. But he finished in 41 hours and 33 minutes. So
first year, time for a tent in that year.
Yeah. First year was 68 hours and 57 minutes. Okay. And we spent a lot of time on land. We camped at Jeff City. We slept. They slept like 7-8 hours, got up. It was a whole thing. I'm like, this is great. And then he wanted to go fast.
And it's all downhill from there.
I am lucky if I get about a 15 or 20 minute cat nap here or there. There's not time for me to sleep with him going at that pace, because I've got to be on my game to make sure he gets where he wants to go.
So if you've got a fast racer, to have a second driver and stuff.
Do you sleep in the car then, Ellen? Are you guys car sleepers?
Yep. Okay. Yep. So I just, cowbells are great, but if you see somebody even during the day,
and don't knock on windows if you see people sleeping.
Don't knock on their windows and go, "Hey, are you so and so's wife?" And I'm like, is he okay? You panic, so there's a lot of courtesy things to think about the people around you. Of just when you pull in at night somewhere, cut your lights to the park lights, not high beams, and don't tap on windows. And
so
again,
we were like Ellen, like the first year was like, I think 58 hours or something. I don't know. I'm terrible. I didn't care really that year. I was just like, get me out of this race. I'm dying. But that year we thought we were, so I'm sure we see questions about hotels every year. So I'm just going to put this out there. If your racer's not going fast, a hotel could be possible. However, there's not a lot of hotels near the ramps. So the first year, I think we stayed in Marshall at like a Comfort Inn or something. It really turned into, it was fine. I had a 9-week-old. So the 9-week-old stayed there with grandma while the Nana and I went to the checkpoint in the middle of the night. So if you're a nice ground crew who's supplying your racer during the middle of the night, or there's an emergency, you need to be able to get to them quickly. So we had to drive, 30 or 40 minutes back to the hotel after the late checkpoint. So that was like at midnight. So I think we drove back 30 minutes to Marshall from Miami. And then by the time you take a shower and get in bed, we had like an hour, I think, of sleep. And then we had to drive on to meet him because he was going to sleep in the car at Glasgow, I think was what we did. So it turned into a place to shower, which was silly because if we had just gone to Glasgow, we could have had a free shower. So again, like Ellen said, we've evolved over the years. So we don't do hotel anymore, but there's just hearing and knowing people with the race, like there's lots of ground crews who say, I'm not going to supply you overnight. So they go sleep at a bed and breakfast at Herman and they see them at the next checkpoint. So if you are that kind of ground crew, that's okay. Again, this is all, how fast are you going? What's your paddler going to do? So you need to know that to make your plan. So that's where you have all those annoying conversations from, New Year's till now. So it's not too late. Have the conversation. Hotel. We've done a tent at Glasgow, which was also terrible because it was hot. We had a loud generator. By the time you get a tent set up, you're wanting to leave. It just was not feasible for how fast that year was. And then, like I said, we got a trailer the third year. So I had the little carry along, which turned out to work really well. We pull in, I plug in or turn the generator on quick. We jump in the back, sleep for as long as we can. I can walk down and back without waking, kids and stuff like that. So that works until your paddler wants to sleep in the middle of the night at Herman. And then you're crawling out without waking up the 2-year-old so that the paddler can crawl in and smell up your bed and then get out, 40 minutes later when you're, telling them to get out of here. So, you'll figure out what works for you and the length, but car sleeping is always a great option if you're not, we have tiny kids. So that wasn't an option for us, but lots of people do it successfully. You may be hot, but, it is what it is. So,
and that's sort of knowing and learning yourself and your racer. The first year learned that as good as I am at putting up a tent under normal circumstances, under the stress of the 340 and not sleeping so well, a normal tent is not my go-to. I'm just going to lay out my sleeping bag or a blanket or just flat up on the concrete of the ramp and sleep on the ramp. Because realistically, if I go somewhere else, I'm hard pressed to wake up to an alarm or anything else like that. So
you and Millie are such hard sleepers. you guys are out. When you're out, you're done. It's amazing.
Yeah. So like you will see us on the ramp just asleep there, because that way if Chris comes in, either someone else who's there can wake us up and be like, hey, he's coming in, or sometimes he's toward the head of the pack and there's not always a crew there. Like Doug's pulling out ahead and Ellen's left, so it's just us. And that way if Chris pulls in, I'm not out in the middle of the pavilion at Glasgow at 2 a.m. and Chris is going, where is everybody? Speaking of Glasgow, that is a poor cell phone reception spot. You can get it kind of on the banks up near that pit toilet. You do not get cell phone reception out by the bathrooms, out by that pavilion, out in the field. It's just non-existent. There's a couple of places that are still a little spotty, but most carriers are okay. And also, like, I feel like we've gotten better reception over the years at all of the checkpoints.
Yeah,
it's improved, but Glasgow is still pretty sketchy for cell phone reception.
I think
but know yourself.
Chamois always been bad for me. I can't ever get.
And I think it depends on the carrier too, though.
Yeah.
So, just plan on there being poor cell phone reception just to be safe.
And you may have to get crafty, because if you don't know, like when we met at Chamois, and it was like one that we hadn't planned on, we had, my mom had taken like a garden spinner. That was our little like thing that we'd hold up. So we actually staked it in the ground at the end of the ramp with a flashlight on it, and they were able to see through the fog to get there. But, I think we talked in the other session that I was in, it's really hard to see things on the bank, even though it's bright and, looks like the flashing light, you would be easy, but it's not that easy.
Yeah. Well, and also, I mean, Chris one year was telling me to light up New Haven, and I didn't really have a good lighting situation, but I had some glow sticks. And let me tell you, nobody found New Haven because it's behind this little, what's that rock thing called? A wing dike. It's behind the ramp at New Haven is behind a wing dike, right? So we were trying to set up so that they didn't run into the wing dike trying to come in. Also, it was pretty dangerous that year. And I think we heard a couple of people talking about it was alien spacecraft, because you're pretty deep into hallucinations by then. So, setting up a light that's not going to night blind people, but also is not going to cause worse hallucinations. It's a fine line.
Yeah. I think, with the cell phones, like, I know every year that Doug's done this race, I made him get a spot tracker to just so I could watch him and make sure that he was okay. So if I see that spot stopped somewhere it's not supposed to be, that we've agreed upon for more than a certain amount of time, I'm like, okay, something's wrong. You know, and it helps me track and pace him too, to know what, how fast is he going? How many miles per hour is he going? How much time do I really have to get to the Marshall Walmart and then back to the next checkpoint? So the spot trackers, I think, are huge. Yeah. Or some way, to keep a blip on them.
Speaking of that, know your racer. There are some racers who will call their ground crew. I hear that this happens. Oh, honey, can you bring me this? Or I'm really craving that, or I need this thing for the boat when I get in. If you have that racer, awesome. Watch for their calls, get them what they need. But also talk to your racer, because not all racers do that, and that is fine. It just means that you really need to be on your game, trying to anticipate what they need. Does your racer wear glasses? Bring a napkin so they can wipe their lenses clean, and they'll probably really want to clean one every time, or, however that works. New sweat rag is a luxury, but that's one of our go-tos, that he gets a new tube sack that he soaks over his neck, a clean one every time, and a clean napkin for his glasses.
So we don't do spots. So we do the 1 hour call. Yeah, we do the call. Okay. So we do a phone call. We've not had, again, there's cell reception you can never really anticipate, but we've never had a problem going through. We are on, I guess, whatever Sprint is now, T-Maybe, I think
T-Mobile
the other day. So but we do the 1 hour out call of what we need, because that gives the ground crew time to get what they need. So that can't be go get me a special sandwich from Arby's, which he tried to pull the first year. And I was like, no, that has to wait till the next one. So if you need that, you really need to talk about, special things or have them pre-planned as much as possible. Because again, like I was saying with the hotel, that may be 30 minutes away to get something. But we do the 1 hour out call. Usually we say, like, we always know based off of we do a little pre-planning, Ellen, okay, you'll feel proud, but we kind of know at each stop, we're always going to replace water. We're always going to replace like Perpetuum, Tailwind, Gatorade, whatever you're doing. And then we kind of have food bags. We do little mesh laundry bags that hook into the boat. And so we have two for our tandem, for instance. When I was racing, we had, each of us had one. So we had 2 refillers. When he's solo, I just have one of each, one in the boat, one getting ready to go in the boat. So I could restock. So he'd say, I'm not feeling the fruit, give me more Pringles, or I'm not feeling the trail mix, I want this. And so it would usually be stuff we already bought so that we can do that. Or can you find out if anybody has extra tape or whatever it is. And so that 1 hour out call kind of gives us that time to get the water jugs ready. You got it, because you don't want to pull stuff out of the cooler too early. It'll get warm. So it kind of gives you that, like, okay, he's about an hour out. And he does those charts, they talk about those on the forum and on the Facebook group. So he knows when he's about to get to the next one based off of river miles and stuff like that. So, well, but that's just us. I mean, Spot's great. I also got spoiled a couple of years because he was kind of with somebody who had Spot. So like they'd be like, hey, they're gonna come in a minute. So if they're traveling kind of around the same people too, you might.
If they get a
Chris
spot,
is always.
Oh, sorry. I was gonna say, if they get a spot and it's the first year they've used it, you have to reset it every 24 hours or it will cut off.
Oh,
and then you won't know where your person's at. So
really important. And we would always do, like, when he first came in the morning, like a first morning check, we'd turn it off, turn it back on. You all wouldn't know, but behind these wonderful Spiz containers up here, this glorious picture from, I forget the lady's name who does all our pictures every year at the 340. Yes, she does amazing work. Yes. I made Chris buy this one because behind the Spiz containers, you can't see, but it's him in his boat with his phone out. Because it's like one of 2 times ever in the 7 years he's raced that he's called me.
What?
So I don't know how his brain works. He could be hallucinating hardcore and still calculate his math of, I'm going to be in at about this time. And I take his word for it. And I give him an hour either way. And I try to make sure I'm at that checkpoint at least an hour before he said he was going to be there. Now, I have no concept of time and some really hardcore ADHD. So that doesn't always happen. What I've learned over the years is that is why I sleep at the ramps. If I sleep anywhere else, I'm not getting back there, right? Know yourself. And
Megan,
also,
and that call, one more thing, that call when he calls in, it's usually not only like what he needs, but we also do are we pulling the boat out? Because that's a different kind of stop. Like you're going to be in the water ready to go. You're not going to have your tennis shoes on. And so, like, you would not believe the people at ramp with tennis shoes on. Like, wear some sandals, wear some boots, something that you can get wet
dry
and
your feet out
and get in the water. Because if we're not pulling that boat out, my job is to grab the tip of the boat. And again, this doesn't apply if you're in a plastic boat or something that you don't care getting all banged up. But there's a lot of really expensive boats in this race. So if you're also ground crew and standing at the ramp, don't touch anybody's boat unless they say it's okay, because you may pull it up the ramp and ruin like a $7,000 boat, and you don't want to do that. So, so we do are we pulling it out? If we're not, then it's grab the tip of the boat and start handing things. It's going to be fast and you need to be super prepared. That's where the binoculars or the whatever helps. Otherwise, we're standing there with the stuff kind of set up off the ramp so we can get out of the way and pull the boat up. And then the little pool noodles or some kind of soft thing to put your expensive boat on, because, you don't want to. And
also, know that about, do they need a stand? Do they need the noodles? Do they need something if you're putting on the ground? Is there that, whatever that drain is underneath that I can't think of the name of?
Bilge.
Yeah. Also,
I think every time we go to a ramp, like Doug's going to stop, we call it the oh shit bag. So I take
Yeah,
it with
we
me.
bring it too. Yeah. And it's important to
It's
have.
got the Gorilla Tape
so
or the duct tape.
You almost
and the
you will
battery.
almost never need it. In fact, there
Yeah.
were years where we're like, we've never used it. Why would we bring it? And guess what? We put a giant hole. Well, okay, I wasn't in the boat. Chris put a giant hole in the boat one day. And let me tell you, when the racer goes, I know how to take care of my boat. Let me do this repair. And they're at Cooper's Landing, which is halfway through, just over. Tell them no. No, because whether they know how to do it or not, and they're mentally capable of it, their fine motor skills are not there.
Yeah.
Period. No matter what they want to think. Have them walk you through it. Tell me what you want me to do. All right. And do it. We used Gorilla Tape to repair a hole in his boat that he then finished. We got it not as good as we wanted, but good enough that he got from Cooper's Landing. It was probably about this big, I think. Chris, you can pop on if you have arguments, but
he's not allowed to today.
No, you don't like the little Sesame Street.
No,
there he is.
make it go away.
You got that to Jeff City that year, right? And then
we did.
You guys
so we got it good enough that it could get to Jeff City. And then while he was on the water, because we had run out of tape, I then ran to a Walmart to get gobs upon gobs of more Gorilla Tape because I didn't know how much this would take. And at the end, he's like, why did you get so much? And I'm like, did you want to have to stay longer? Right? I'll get extra and return it if I need to, but I don't want to have to go back out and take extra time from him. And so when we got to Jeff City, we just finished taping it up, did a much better, thorough job, sealed it up, gave it a couple extra layers, sent him off, and he finished that year. So yes, always have your emergency stuff with you. You never know.
I was going to say a few minutes ago when you guys were talking about like the little
scissors
extras.
Are huge. Always have a pair of scissors with you.
Scissors are great. And those little, the little wisp toothbrushes that you can brush your teeth and throw away.
Great for ground crew and paddler. When I was racing, I put Wisp and some like of those makeup wipe-off wipes. Yeah. I put those in a little plastic bag in my night bag. Oh my gosh, just being able to wipe the sunscreen and salt off your face makes you feel like an entirely different person. It's rejuvenating. You don't feel gross for like 5 seconds. And then reapplying and helping them to think about things that they're probably not thinking about too, like the you know what I'm talking about, the Boudreaux or the Aquaphor that they have everywhere.
They need to lube in certain areas because of chafing.
Yeah, re-lubing is helpful.
I'm not going to lie. He's my husband and all, but I will remind him that he needs to re-lube. That's his task.
Yes.
Because at that point, he's pretty gross. And circling back to the safety bag, Gorilla Glue tape, scissors, absolutely, but also like a couple of washcloths or hand towels, because one of the biggest things on that repair was making sure the boat was dry. And also that towel really helped us kind of smooth out the tape as it went on and get all those air bubbles out. It's a really random thing, but like it worked amazingly. So make sure you got a couple extra of those. Back to a little bit of sleeping too is know your racer, and their stuff is going to change as it goes. Chris used to always want to lay out so he could just, stretch because he's confined in the boat. As he switched over to surf skis and things like that, and his back would lock up a little bit every year, no matter which style he was racing. But what we've learned over the years is that if Chris is going to sleep, which he doesn't do it much anymore, but if he is, it needs to be in the passenger seat. He needs to be kind of reclined a little bit, but he can't be lying out flat. His back will lock up and he'll have worse issues. So kind of play it by ear with your racer, know what their needs are. If they wake up and say, "Where am I?" your response should be way more specific than you think it needs to be. Where am I? Oh, you're in the pavilion. What? At Glasgow.
You're doing a race. Did you remember that?
In Missouri, you're racing. Oh, I thought I went to bed at home. Like the hallucinations are there. They are intense. Yes, that was. So yeah, if somebody says like, "Where am I?" they don't mean like, "Hey, where did I wander off to and wake up?" Like they could legit mean, "Where physically on the continent am I right now?" Random thing.
Well, and I just want to say, ground crew is a very hard gig. If you don't think it is, you're crazy. Mm-hmm. If you got into this and you're like, oh my gosh, they listened to this whole thing and they're like, what did I get myself into? Yeah, you should. But it's also a hoot. It's so much fun. So
it is. It really is
fun along the way.
We found for stinky clothes. There is Midway truck stop right off the highway, and they have a laundromat. And they have fun quarter machines. So, the quarter machines that push the quarters off the edge. I've become a master at that now.
Bless
My boys are very impressed.
I would just be like lost. You'd be at the next checkpoint going, Chris, where's Megan? She's at the laundromat because she's got no concept of time. Like I have to set alarms if I have to stop at Walmart.
Now everything just goes in a trash bag and probably in the trash.
So I used to, over the years, like when Chris would leave, I would
drive back,
prep his stuff when I was there before I left. So it was ready when I got there. And what I realized is I lose track of time. So I will, when he leaves, I leave and I will then prep stuff when I get to the next checkpoint. So I know that I'm there. That said,
I usually eat wherever I'm at after he's gone. And then we go. And then you just get to the next point. Like if you have to get fuel or whatever, that's fine. But yeah, sitting around that is really easy to get lost. And
I will. He gets in the car. I get Millie and I in the car. We'll stop on the way if we need to refill water. I will always restop, top off the gas pretty much on my way out. Even if it's just a smidgen, I'll top off. I'll double check my ice. If I need to get another gallon of water, I do it there. If there's something to wash or rinse, I'll try and do it there. Also, I make sure Chris has at least 3 of anything. Like his water stuff doesn't need to be washed out. But if like his spizz containers or whatever else he's mixing does need to be washed, make sure there's at least 3. Because if I don't hit a place to wash it, I want to know there's a clean one available. So just know you're not always going to be able to wash things immediately. Plan accordingly. But yeah, I'll stop at whatever gas station I can and then drive on and we'll eat when we get there and I'll pack his bag while we're eating and that sort of thing. But that's me personally. Like every time I stop for an extended period of time, I end up missing him. If I make a Walmart run, it's on the one where I know he's got a longer stretch. It's the one in Marshall or wherever. It's like that triangle between. It's the only Walmart I go to because it's centrally located unless there's an emergency, in which case I'm like, dear God, how do I get through Jefferson City? But yeah, it's, and I have to set a timer for myself and I have to have a list going in. But again, know that about yourself. Be realistic with who you are.
Watching the radar was something that I wasn't kind of prepared for, but that's another kind of important.
That's a good one.
Piece. I might have accidentally one time said, looking at the radar and talking to some other people, like, you guys are past the storm. And like, right as I'm saying it, I hear like huge thunder happening and they're like in the worst torrential rainfall, like immediately after I finished my sentence. So watching the weather radar and kind of helping them know what they're going into, which is really tricky if you're not familiar with the state. And even living here my entire life, I did not know where the heck anything was. So
crazy thing.
Yeah.
One thing I learned too about Missouri is that you could see the line of the storm coming down. And you're like, oh my gosh, we're about to get hit because it's right there. And no, it's staying there more often than not. So yeah, start checking your radar. Yeah. If you listen to your fellow ground crews too, they might have some information for you. Like Chris happens to be a certified weather watcher. Like if there's something going down, he's the one calling it in. Right. So there was a couple of, at least one year where he got into Glasgow and he's like, I'm just not going. Okay. Thank you. I will let the others talk. I got a direct message.
Tell him to hush.
But no, I mean, like, trust your fellows, information, talk to each other, because you're going to find out things like, hey, this person knows that this is dangerous. If they're not going back out, maybe you shouldn't go back out. Like,
right. Well, and that's true, Megan, because one year I tried to shove Ryan into a storm, probably at that same point at Glasgow. And like people that left 5 minutes earlier had this storm pushing them along and totally safe. And he lost like 5 hours or something to that storm. But see, I didn't know the river. I only knew the ground crew side of it. So right after that was Dalton Bottoms, or Lisbon Bottoms. So he was like, there's no good place to pull off. I'm not jumping out. So we were literally carrying the boat down. I'm like, please leave so I can sleep. And the wind starts like, swinging, and you're like, okay. So, pay attention. Like that's where the good communication comes in. Like if, you're a paddler, you need to know the river, because if your ground crew maybe say go, and you need to know that there's no good place to pull over. And that matters on the water level, right? If you're on a high water year, which it sounds like maybe not this year, I don't know, could change tomorrow. We don't know. You may not have sandbars and things that you can pull over on. So your options are really limited versus a low water year where, you may have more options to pull out or to get to safety, but also keep in mind, you're leaving yourself exposed. It can be really dangerous. So what's your plan then, and kind of know what you're going to do with yourself. So.
Yeah. It's a lot of communication all the way around. Like everybody's got to have their plan, like I said, and the backup plan to that, and know that there's going to be unexpecteds that are going to throw in, but it's hard to ground crew. But it's so much fun too. And you meet some really awesome people. And I know for me, like I've been able to hang out with both of you guys several MR340s, and get to know a lot of the Missouri River relief people, that they help out a lot with the water and just different things. And they're amazing. And I know, so Jacob Simon, sorry, haha. We've ran with him ground crew wise. Every year we've done this. Tandemonium and Doug and Chris, they're all just right there. And one of my favorite things is we have cowboy coffee and snacks, at least by Washington. And we just hang out for a while. So it's nice, like relaxing thing for us to look forward to while we're waiting on them to come in.
I just thought of a PSA I have to say, or else I'll regret it.
Yes.
I worked the finish line last year. Ground crew, listen to this. It's very important. Go to the ramp, and I cheer for your people, but help them get out of their boat and carry their boat up, because I cannot tell you how many ground crew thought that there was going to be a full staffed group of people waiting to
There's really not.
There is ramp volunteers, and they work so hard. If you roll in looking all pretty and whatever, you better have some sandals on and get ready to get disgusting, because that's something that we didn't know that first year. And poor Kate Mansker sitting there like, she can't carry every boat up the ramp. So yeah, you got to be ready to help your paddler out, help them get their boat up the ramp. They are so pooped at the end. I know when I finished paddling, I was a disaster. Like I'm the token child for like looking like an idiot at the end, lost all bodily function, couldn't hold myself upright. So I looked like a mess. But
you did it.
I did it. But it was not pretty, let's just say. So make sure
that's an important thing to note though, across the board.
Yeah.
Those checkpoint volunteers, if they're pulling boats, it is them doing a favor. They are working a courtesy. They are not required to pull boats. That is not part of their job. So if you hit a ramp where the ramp checkpoint people aren't pulling boats, it's not, gosh, they're not doing their job. Like, no, they are there to run the checkpoint, make sure everyone's safe. If they're pulling boats, it's a favor. And realistically, they're probably encouraged not to, because they don't always know, like we were saying, if you're pulling somebody else's boat, do you need to lift it? Can you drag it? What is it? So it's your job as a ground crew, realistically, to be there and help pull that boat at every checkpoint. Yeah. And if somebody's willing to pop in and help you, that is awesome. God bless them. that is part of your role.
Yep. And if you're unsupported, you may need to shout that when you come into a ramp. I don't have a ground crew. Can somebody help me carry my boat? Like we don't know who you are necessarily unless, you know whoever's working that ramp. But, this is a big race. Oh my gosh. Why? Chris. But they're there to help because they love the race, they love the community. So make sure you tell them thank you, like all the volunteers do, even as ground crew, because they're helping you whether you realize it or not. And especially the safety boat people, they're out to keeping your racers safe. So
we'll pop in anytime you need us. You just got to let us know.
So we have a couple of questions I want to see you guys answer.
Fantastic.
Dana Atwell asks, how do you track your racers? Now, I know you covered spot devices, but is there anything else, GPS, phone, Garmin, that you use?
I know a lot of people have said they use the Find My whatever apps. I have actually used that with Chris when he did the Rock River source to
Mississippi.
Confluence. Yes, that. And it worked pretty well, but we had good signals. So I've heard a lot of people had good luck with the Find My type apps, but I've also heard a lot of people are like, oh, it cut out. It's been sketchy. So really, it kind of comes down to what you're comfortable with, what works for you. Run your practice trials and see if it's working.
Nothing.
Like if they're,
So we do nothing. We just do the phone call. We don't use.
You get the hour out phone call.
Yep.
But that's a good way to track too. You get a phone call,
But you have to know, so for something like that, just like I think Megan said before, like losing track of time or whatever, you really have to know how fast your paddler is going. And it depends how you set up your stops. And again, this is all just anticipated stuff. You can't really help the non-anticipated stops, right? But I think we did Ellen's kind of plan where it was every 30 something. How many miles is it every X amount?
I go basically to 2, 3.
It's like however many miles channel side, right? What was it? It was like,
I don't know. I end up somewhere between like 9 and 12 places that I stop. Doug does not stop at all of those.
So ours turned out to be like in 2018 when I was raised, it was like every 3 or 4 hours or something we would be stopping.
Yeah.
And it wouldn't be like a full out stop, but it would just jump in and out. So you had like our ground crew kind of knew it. We did almost the same distance at each one. And then we didn't necessarily, and if you're a ground crew and you don't know this, you don't have to stop. They don't have to stop at the checkpoint. All they need to do is you need to text in their thing through Race Out that they're in and out. Like it can be the exact same time, just they're in and out. They didn't stop. So they just kept going. You don't have to have them pull in. They don't need to talk to somebody. I don't know. Every year somebody thinks you have to walk up to a table and tell somebody. It's not like that. So if we weren't stopped, like we didn't stop at Jeff's. So his mom, just texted us in and out right then as she waved at us going by. So one year he asked me for gloves because he'd never worn gloves paddling before, but he's having like a huge issue with one of his fingers. So I was driving to Richmond. I had another ground crew look for him at Waverly. Can you wave at him and, check him in and out real quick for us? And then I met him at the next one with the gloves. So it's, you don't have to see anybody, but that's why the 1 hour works for us because we had kind of that plan set up ahead of time. But if you don't have that and you don't know your rate or maybe don't know your racer that well, you're not into paddling, you're like, what are these people doing? That may not work for you. So.
And Ellen, do you do the spot device or what do you do for tracking Doug?
Yeah. So we've always done the spot. And it's worked out great for us. I've always not had an issue with signal or it updating or being able to access it at all. And we've used it, all of his races, the 340, South Dakota, Chattajack, all of it. So I love it.
One thing to throw out there with this year potentially being low water year, there's going to be a lot more sandbars. So your racer may end up stopping on a sandbar and suddenly you're going, they should have been here by now. So if you do have a way to check in with them and check in on that, you can see, are you stopped or are you, and seeing maybe where they're stopped, or give a call because, otherwise you're just like, sandbar.
And if your racer has Yeah. If your racer has a cell phone or something, wants to take the cell phone with him, Doug always has a phone with him. But instead of worrying about carrying like a battery pack or any of that, we just swap phones. So I'll charge mine, and then when it's time and his is getting low, we just swap them back
So
and forth.
we didn't do that. We switched our phones to like the ultimate battery power saving, and then we only had it set to call and text as the options. I think I put camera on mine so I could take pictures, which Ryan wasn't going to do. But that way you could call out and text out, but otherwise every other function was shut down, and it lasted the whole race that way.
Nice.
And then we have a question from Marianne that she had trouble finding Franklin Island. Any tricks or techniques? I know from a paddler's perspective, it's hard to find unless someone pulls out.
Well, so the map that I'm going to send out, the link to the Google map, literally has the longitude and latitude right on the ramp at Franklin Island. Because the one that I had found before, it pulls you into almost like a camp spot or like a gravel road that's off the side, and it's not really Franklin Island. But if you just keep going straight down that road, you will get to the river.
Is Franklin Island the one that doesn't have a bathroom, that everybody always needs to use the bathroom when they get there?
It has a portage on, and the insurance guy's there.
Different one.
Sometimes.
Okay, that's a different one.
Trevor Tilton's got a good setup. And if you're a ground crew and you end up in a cornfield near Washington, it's okay. Just keep going.
Yep.
It's okay. And laugh your head off, because you're going to go, what the heck is happening to my life that I ended up here? Just keep driving, and you will eventually make it to a road. And still one of the funniest moments of my life. I've never laughed so hard. Just so hilarious.
The trick is stay on, what is that, Highway 94, and goes around an airport, and you can stay on the highway instead of going through the bottoms.
But just go through the cornfield and laugh your head off, because it's spectacular. If you don't drive through at least one cornfield, you haven't done it right, I feel like. Like middle of nowhere, children of the corn, terribleness.
And just a tip that I want to throw in before any other question: get your car ready, get all your tires like checked for air, make sure you have all your fluids topped off, oil changed, whatever it needs to be. Like, do that, and then you will be a whole lot less stressed about something going wrong with your car.
Then your husband won't be yelled at by the oil change guy when you're sitting next to him because you haven't changed your oil in a year.
I mean, that wasn't my race. That was like yesterday. We pulled up and like they're going to be pulling out sludge. But yes, Chris normally does the pre-pep car thing, which is awesome because.
But Ellen does.
Theoretically, I know how to do it all. I won't
want to be breaking down in the middle of Missouri, and I fear that phone call. If you are the racer, seriously, get your ground crew AAA and get them the gold one. It costs more, but it will tow them 100 miles. And if you are stuck in Lexington, that's probably what you need.
I know there was a lady one year. She just ended up with a flat tire right before Miami. Her racer was coming in. So a bunch of us, again, everybody helps each other out. We all pitched in. There's some people that stayed, helped change the tire. Other people went to the ramp, made sure the racer was okay. She didn't get to see him at that one, but he was handled. And then her car was good. So she got to meet up with him later. So you need the help, you ask.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then from Kate Watson, any tips for ground crew with tandem groups? I guess this one's going to go mostly to Laura, since you're the only one of us that has done anything tandem.
What do you mean with tandem groups? Like two different needs? Is that what
you're taking care of? Multiple racers,
multiple racers are probably tandem, like a tandem boat, like you and Ryan.
Yeah, that's fair. So I mean, I can speak to like we are married, so it might be different if you're not, if you're like a men's tandem or whatever, whatever. But for us,
tandems can get married these days, Laura.
Well, okay. I just meant like you're with your buddy or whatever, equality, whatever. Okay. So, I just, for us, we had the only huge difference we had from like a solo boat was that you're giving double. So you have 2 food bags, right? So you're preparing 2 food bags. So we actually pre-filled plastic bags with what we were going to tentatively want at every stop, plus like 10, right? Because you don't know how much you're going to go through certain things. I mean, then all the extra food was kind of just put to this one bag. For tandem, we had 2 different liquids. So I can't do Perpetuum because of the soy or something that's in it. It makes me nauseous. So I went with Tailwind, which also ended up making me nauseous, but whatever. We had pre-measured bags. It looked like we were little drug dealers. And this, I think, was an Ellen tip. So we did little pre-measured baggies. And then our names, like we on the list of like our plan of the stops, it would be like Laura, Tailwind, and on the in Ryan Perpetuum. And then on the tub, it had the measurements of water, because they're not like, I had a blue and orange bottle and or blue and green, and he had the white bottle. So we had like Laura, blue, green, you know, with this much water, Ryan, these bottles with this much. That way they're not having to think every time, because you do it like 20 times, you're gonna put the wrong thing. Like mine needed way more water than his did. And so we put all the measurements out, and then those would just get swapped out each time. So for tandem, it can get a little tricky because you might have differing needs. And then like one of the stops, I wanted a breakfast sandwich. He wanted something else. So like, you know, just again, communication and planning ahead. Where is that going to happen? And then, you know, you might need a system. Maybe you're carrying them in 2 separate bags down to the ramp so that you don't hand the wrong people the wrong things, because that can take up time. Again, that depends how fast you're going. If you're not trying to exchange super fast and you're tandem or and you're a big team boat, it may not be as big of a deal. I mean, we weren't necessarily trying to go fast. We just were trying to not stop. So for us, it was trying to exchange quickly. So yeah, different needs, I think is going to be the biggest thing with that, is just knowing like one person wants a Pepsi, one wants a Coke. And it is very important that you stick, like Ellen or Megan said, with like what they have trained with, because if I had gotten, you know, the wrong thing and he got mine, I mean, we could switch, but also in a boat, like we're in a hooky, so it's a little bit tricky for us to hand things back and forth and stuff like that. So I don't know if that answered the question, but it can just be a lot of labeling and a lot of organization.
Yeah, and I would remind everyone, when we talked about this with Joe Mann in one of the other webinars, he talked about having one ground crew for each paddler, if at all possible. Even if you have 2 or 3 or 4 or 6 or 20 in a boat, each one has a dedicated ground crew, ideally, so that you don't run into the issues that Laura's pointing out, because that could get really confusing if you're sleep deprived in 70 hours.
Yeah.
So.
And that way you're only, if you can, you're only tracking, I know what this one person needs, not what 5 people need. But I mean, again, Laura, if you get what you can get, and you know, you try and make it as easy as,
and don't
you try and make it as easy for them as you can. If you know that
your ground crew's trying to take care of 2 people, like you may not get the same luxury as a single boat. Like you can't ask for weird things, and if you didn't request it ahead of time, you may have to make do. So.
Mm-hmm. I know Laura had mentioned food bags too, which is something Chris does. He'll label it for every checkpoint so that like when we're going through, we can just pull a food and nutrition bag. There are certain bags where he wants them separated. So knowing where your racer's going to reach for like he wants all his hammer gels and applesauces in one pocket versus Clips bars in another. Like, where do they want things? What are they going to want? So you know how to load their boat.
Yeah. All right. So it is 8:00, which means we need to wrap this up. I want to thank our panelists, starting in reverse order here. Ellen Robinette. Any last words, Ellen, before we finish up?
I think if you're going to do the race and you're ground crewing for somebody, you should just communicate and have fun. Go have fun with it.
And
enjoy the whole experience.
Ellen, send your map to everybody.
I will send my map. As soon as this is done, I'll put it on the Facebook page.
Yeah, and I will try and connect that to the YouTube video of this on 340 Paddler, so it'll be in the description.
Cool.
Thank you, Ellen. Laura, thank you for joining us. And what do you have sort of last minute tips?
Drive through a cornfield and enjoy. You're going to stink and it's going to be exhausting, but it's super fun. Okay, it's not fun. No, it's fun. I'm just kidding. Don't tell my husband I said that.
Okay, I'll text him. It's fine.
No.
Okay, he's watching. It's
he
fine.
is watching. I just saw that.
And Megan, anything to add?
I mean, it's a hassle. It's a pain. It is the worst thing to have to deal with leading up into it. But, once we're there, like, I don't handle the stress of trips well. I just don't. It's not pretty. But once we get there, we're having that experience. It's something I would not trade for the world. Chris and I refer to it as like our adult version of summer camp, because you just get to go and have fun with these people that you haven't seen for a year. And it's just a good time. And I wouldn't trade it for the world. So try it, enjoy yourself, talk to people.
Well, thank you very much for joining us. Next month, we will actually bump up the webinar. This will be our last next month will be the last webinar. It will be July 12th at 6:30 p.m. We will be dealing with safety with myself, Steve Schnarr, and hopefully, if he's available, Scott, the fearless leader, Manskirt.
And Chris will actually be wearing like clothes next time.
I might wear clothes. You have to wonder if I'm actually wearing pants. Hold on. Let me stand up slowly. As
no, don't stand up. Don't stand up.
Otherwise, until next time, this is 340 Paddler, hoping that you keep your paddle in the water.